I'm NBC Connecticut Chief Meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan. We've got a real mess on our hands with some strong wind moving through the state, and the winds already in some towns have been gusting over 60 miles per hour, and that is obviously causing some issues. We've got trees and power lines that have come down, and in some locations we've had a fair number of power outages being reported. So I want to know what's going on in your town. Let us know what you're seeing in your backyard. The wind is whipping out there. The good news is this is all going to come to an end, at least the strongest of the wind, in about an hour or so. It's a really, really quick hitter. So it is going to be moving on through. And as that happens, we will see things improving. But it's just going to take us a little while to get there. And so right now, especially east of I-91, that is where we have some of the strongest winds. But I'm just looking at the window here in West Hartford, and you can see some really, really strong winds going on. So the peak wind gusts I've seen so far, 67 miles per hour at the Groton New London Airport. Right now, they're gusting up to 63, 54 miles an hour in Willimantic. Saw a wind gust up close to 70 in Norwalk a little bit ago. And also at Hammonasset, a wind gust of 65 miles per hour. Down in Madison along the beach. In terms of power outages, we've got a number of them right now. United Illuminating in the New Haven area reporting looks like 8,000 customers without power. Some of the hardest hit towns, Trumbull, Shelton, Milford, and Bridgeport. And Eversource right now with a number of power outages as well. I'm just looking off the screen here to get the latest numbers. They're at about 28,000 outages, and most of those just occurred recently with the winds coming in. Killingworth, about 40% of the towns without power, about 34% of Clinton, Hampton at 31%, Canterbury 26%, Madison 24%. So those are the towns that have been hardest hit. Generally, eastern Connecticut looks like is going to get the worst out of this in terms of the wind. And again, it's a real quick hitter. So the heaviest of the rain that we had earlier, and boy, was it raining, that is for sure, that has come to an end. So we have just some scattered showers out there. We got a little bit of a dry slot that's moving in. And as that dry slot has moved in, that's allowed some of these winds to mix down to the ground. And I wanted to show you this because this is really instructive of what's going on. This is a look at the wind speeds showing up on Doppler radar. And I want to give you a closer look here. This is in just south of Newport, Rhode Island. Doppler radar is picking up winds of about 100 miles per hour. And to the north of Boston, winds close to 90 miles per hour. Now, those are up at cloud level, but those winds from time to time are getting pushed down to the ground. And that's why we've got those wind gusts that in some areas have exceeded 60 miles per hour. And again, this system's moving through pretty quickly. I'll give you a closer look at it. Let me zoom in a little bit for you so you can see. There we go. So here's the storm. We had a weak little low that developed. We call it a little meso low that moved over Long Island and moved up into Connecticut. And the winds were really maximized on the east side of that. And now we're getting the back edge of the precipitation to move in pretty quickly. So once, now that we've got that sort of that little tiny mesolo through, things are probably going to improve a little bit in terms of the peak of the wind, but we'll still be pretty gusty until we get the back edge of the rain that's showing up through portions of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Once we get that through, that's when we really will begin to improve. So what's going on in your town? We'd love to hear what's going on in your backyard. And for our viewers watching on our streaming channels, you can interact with us and you can chat with us by logging onto our YouTube page or Facebook right now. We'll be able to see what's going on in your town if you want to interact with us in the comments. So the satellite, this is the high resolution, the water vapor satellite loop. You can see we've got a pretty impressive storm here, big dip in the jet stream, and all the moisture is coming to the north. And the storm was strong enough to produce quite a bit of wind in a short period of time. Here's a look outside in New London, and it's rare to see those kinds of white caps on the harbor there in New London. I've been looking at this camera for about 20 years. It's been in the same spot, and that is very impressive to get those kinds of white caps there in the harbor that's relatively well protected. But that's what winds that are gusting over 60 miles per hour will get you, and those winds again, especially in far eastern Connecticut, still going to pick up a little bit over the next hour or so, and then they'll begin to come down and will improve. In Waterbury, we have not seen as much wind. In fact, as you look at the grain, you can see the flags moving around pretty good, but not quite as bad as it was before. So, hey, we've got a lot of great comments coming in here from our viewers. I want to take a closer look at some of those. So Lindsay's asking right now, when will the wind calm down? Again, the wind is going to abate in about an hour or two, at least the strongest of the winds that are strong enough to take down trees and power lines. We'll get improvement there in the next hour or so. Western Connecticut, the strongest winds have already left. Eastern Connecticut may take until 12:30 or 1 to get the real strongest of the wind out of here, but we will see improvement. As you head into the later portion of the afternoon to the evening, the wind's going to pick up again, but it's not going to be like what we have right now. Ethan says, we have lost power in the East Hartford Chevy dealership. Not a surprise. Lots of power outages being reported across Connecticut. Jillian Kim in Farmington, power has been flickering here for sure. Matthew is in New Britain. Periodic light rain and periodic strong wind gusts, but nothing crazy in New Britain. Glad to hear that. Melanie goes, is it going to end around 4 in West Hartford? Yes. I mean, the strongest wind should be moving out of West Hartford within the hour, and things will gradually begin to improve as we go through the day. Todd goes, some power outages at Ridgefield. People are out and visiting us at number 109 Cheese and Wine. I think it's a great Cheese and Wine day. So, yes, thank you, Todd, for the updates. I can't quite say your name. I apologize. But report from Middletown. Horrible in Middletown. Christine in North Franklin. Heavy rain and strong winds. And then Deb now in Waterford says power is out there. Melanie says going to see the Christmas lights. Is tonight going to be okay outside? Yeah, it'll be better by tonight, but at least right now, still pretty gnarly across the state with those power outages that we've got going on through. Now, I'm just taking a look here. I've got my laptop over here with some new information, trying to see if we can have any new information from the Weather Service that's coming in. I just saw wind gusts on Long Island in Farmingdale, Long Island to 62. And so that tells me that we still have some strong wind gusts in the pipeline here. Also, Green Ledge Light, just south of Rowayton, had a wind gust at 10:11 a.m. of 70 miles per hour. That's the peak wind gust we've seen so far in the state. But that's an impressive wind gust for sure. So the strong winds, again, continue to move on through. I don't see any new reports in the Hartford area. Outside of Boston, Blue Hill Observatory in Milton, they're at about 630 feet above sea level. It's a little rock pile, right, where 128 and 93 come together. They reported wind gusts of 72 just a little bit ago. So just shows you that this storm really does mean business as it moves on through. All right, let's take a look here at temperatures. And the temperature is part of the story because as it gets warmer, the warmer you get, the more you're able to bring down the stronger winds. And especially just inland from the Sound, Norwich at 58 degrees. It's 57 in Middletown, 58 in Meriden. Danbury's at 59. It's obviously unusually warm, and we broke the record for the day. Actually, the record is 57. I don't quite know if we did. No, the record was 54. We did break the record in the Hartford area. My apologies today with that 56-degree reading there. But check this out. By tonight, we cool things off in a big way. The temperature is going to drop quickly. By the time we get to this evening at 7 o'clock, we're in the 30s with some wind chill. And by tomorrow morning, that temperature is going to drop into the 20s to right around 30 degrees with some wind chill. So it is going to turn a whole lot colder across Connecticut later on tonight. We do have a wind advisory in effect for all of Connecticut. That should have been a high wind warning. The Weather Service was a little too conservative there. They should have upgraded that this morning to a high wind warning, but it is what it is. We've got those strong winds moving through, and again, power outages are an issue. And in terms of rainfall over the last 24 hours, as expected, many areas around an inch, a little bit less in southeastern Connecticut right near the water, and a little bit more in the western hills. 1.62 inches in Waterbury, 1.45 in Danbury. So quite a bit of rain, especially in western Connecticut. And that Hartford reading is an error because the Hartford area seems to be having some issues with their weather station there. So we've got a couple more comments for you. Want to go through these? Let's see. Deb, power out in Waterford. Nick's reporting almost lost power 2 times around 11. Juliet says the power is out in Prospect. And Matthew says, when will the winds die down in Hartford County? Probably soon, if not already. You may be past the peak of the wind in the Hartford area, but still Eastern Connecticut especially. That's where the core of the strongest winds is moving on through, and those winds are really, really whipping. Let me show you one thing. I think I can pull it up here. I'm not positive I'll be able to do it, but let's take a look. Give me 1 second here. All right, let me look through my graphics here. I believe I have a graphic. I do. Okay, let's see if I can pull this up here. So what I'm showing you here, this is a look at the winds just above our heads. This is at 11:30 in the morning, and these are the winds about 5,000 feet up. And out toward Boston, we've got winds that are approaching 100 miles an hour. But notice that the brighter colors, those brighter pinks and that salmon color, they're beginning to shift to the east of us. So that's what we call the low-level jet. So the jet stream normally is way up high in the atmosphere, but we sometimes get a low-level jet stream that's just above our heads, and that's what's moving through right now. And that's why the strongest winds have begun to shift to the east into eastern Connecticut. And I'll just sort of loop this here and advance it in time, and you can see the core of that jet by 2 o'clock this afternoon is already up in Maine and heading toward New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. So things will improve here locally, and we'll get those strongest winds to come down. On the backside of this, tonight, the winds are going to pick up out of the northwest, probably gusting 40, 45, 50 miles an hour, but nothing like what we had this morning when the core of those strong winds moved on through. So again, appreciate you watching here. Trying to keep you updated on this storm, the pretty nasty storm that's moving through at the moment. We've got a number of power outages being reported across the region. Just getting some updates coming in here. Again, let's see if we have another update from the utilities. Yeah, right now we're still at about 28,000 Eversource customers without power and about 8,100 UI customers. So quite a bit of power outages across the state right now. Some of the hardest hit towns, eastern Connecticut and along the shoreline just east of New Haven out toward Guilford, Madison, Clinton, and Killingworth. Those seem to be some of the towns that were hardest hit. So that's, again, what we're looking at right now with these stronger winds moving through. The heaviest rain has sort of tapered off at least. So now we're not looking at those downpours like we had before. I mean, it was really raining, but now we're beginning to see the precipitation become more spotty and just some sprinkles or some showers. One interesting feature here, if you look closely out toward Danbury, there's this little line that's showing up. That's probably a bit of a wind shift. I imagine the winds now out toward Poughkeepsie have shifted more to a southwesterly or westerly direction. So that tells me that things are going to begin to improve as we bring in that wind shift and we bring in some drier air. And also we get that core of the real strongest of the winds out of here. Showing you those wind velocities before, just wild, showing up on Doppler radar. And behind this front, I mean, boy, does it get cold enough that you've got some snow flying across a good chunk of Pennsylvania and New York State at the moment. And that is, we're not going to get snow here locally. We could actually get a snow shower late tonight or tomorrow morning, but for the most part, this is a rain event and just a brutal day for the ski areas in northern New England. Just unpleasant for sure. They're losing snow, and it's all going to freeze up tonight. So satellite and radar loop across the region. Again, this is the high-res satellite showing that drier air. You can see this orange shading and this red shading. This is some really dry air. This is going to be moving in as we go through the remainder of the day. And so we're going to get the rain to taper off and things will improve. Here's a look outside in New London. Looks like, just got a new update from Eversource now, up to 48,000 Eversource customers without power. Let's take a look at some of the hardest hit towns. 47% of Bolton, 42% of Clinton, 41% of Killingworth, 39% of Canterbury, 37% of Hampton, about 20% of Lebanon and Haddam. So those numbers have definitely gone up about quite a bit in the last 15 minutes or so. So once you start to get above 40, 50,000, that's a pretty scattered outages for sure. And it shows you that we do have certainly a pretty impressive wind event that's going on right now. So here's that look outside in New London, the Whitecaps showing up there as we look across the harbor, looking toward the Bark Eagle. Just a real nasty morning, and the strongest of the wind moving through right now. The wind will begin to improve. I think we will get the strongest winds out of here in the next, let's say, hour, especially on eastern Connecticut, western Connecticut. I think you're through with the worst of it. It's the eastern part of the state, though, that's still dealing with some of those stronger wind gusts. All right, let's see what we've got for comments. Matthew says, felt like a tropical storm at some point. And it sure did. I was outside this morning, had to run to a doctor's appointment this morning, and it was whipping out there. It was impressive for a little while out in Glastonbury. Carl says almost lost power in Durham about an hour ago. David did lose power in the Newington Center area. No power in East Hartford on Connecticut Boulevard area. David is already looking ahead to some possible snow on Tuesday. I have not looked at that at all this morning, David, so I will update you later today for sure. But yes, there is that potential for some snow on Tuesday right before Christmas. So we've got a little ways to go before we start talking about that. Michael goes, occasional moderate wind gusts and wind and rain is tapered off. Really no extreme gusts to speak of. So yeah, it looks like northwestern Connecticut did not get the strongest winds like we had in other parts of the state. So count your blessings there. The winds were much lighter in the northwest corner. The winds were stronger the farther south and east you go. Helen goes, when will the winds come down in the Quaker Hill area down in south western Connecticut? And probably within the hour, I'd say by 12:30, 12:45, I think we're definitely going to start seeing some improvement there. Jane says, power out in Higginham. Eversource better have called an extra cruise. I am sure they did. They tend to be very well prepared for these kinds of events. So I certainly imagine that we will see the power get back on in a quick manner now that we've got these wind gusts moving through. Stephen, when will the wind die down? Again, the strongest wind is sort of right now. I can still hear some gusts up on the roof. So it's still whipping out there. That is for sure. Chrissy says Willimantic, strong winds and rain. We've got, and Clara says the wind is howling here in Milford. Clara, I'd be interested to hear if the wind is still howling down there in Milford or if you've seen a little bit of improvement. So let me know what you're seeing there. Especially, I'm more interested to hear how if things have improved at all. Keith says the power is out in Manchester. Let's see. Urban Woods 363. Thank you for doing these videos. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Clara says, yes, it is. They're still coming in pretty good. Connor wants to know, will the winds be as strong later this evening? They will not be as strong later this evening. They will be less than they are now. So the winds will come down. Gabrielle says, Norwich, the wind is crazy. I am not surprised to hear that based on what we're looking at now with these strong winds moving through. I got a report from Tolland, a few houses down up in that part of the state. Not so surprised. I got a wind gust here. I'm just looking at my phone. Had a couple text messages from some weather friends. Wind gust of 61 miles per hour in Coventry. Just saw that. Looks like we have a wind gust of 63 in Middletown. That was the DOT weather station there on Route 9, right where 17 and 9 come together. That's an impressive wind gust for one of those stations. And again, things look like we're beginning to see some improvement in Western Connecticut, but pretty nasty to see this kind of wind move on through. Patricia says the wind is whipping across Saybrook Point with a power outs in East Hartford. And Patrick wants to know, when will the winds die down in Berlin? And I think we will see some improvement. We will get the wind to die down. In fact, you can already see out in Western Connecticut, Danbury is now gusting to 28, Greenwich is 32. So we are already seeing improvement out in that part of the state. So slowly but surely, we're starting to see the winds come down a little bit, but that peak area continues to be the eastern part of the state. And that's where we have the most damage reports. Jared reporting in from East Killingly on Twitter, or X, I guess it's called. Trees down everywhere in East Killingly. And a couple people asking what's going on tonight. Is the wind going to be as strong? It will not be as strong tonight as what we had today. But again, powerful wind event coming through. We've got this system that produced the strong wind. The worst of it, the strongest, what we call the low-level jet, is now east of us, or at least east of the I-91 corridor, still across Rhode Island, up at eastern Connecticut, and heading up toward Boston. That's where the core of the strongest wind is right now. And once we get rid of that, once it moves east, you're going to begin to see some improvement. I got to report some power outages in Danielson. Not a huge surprise there. And again, things slowly getting better. Let me just loop this for you, show you. This is a look at the wind velocity on Doppler radar. And you can see where you have that bright blue and those bright oranges. That's where the Doppler radar is picking up winds over 100 miles per hour. Those are up in the clouds, but we're seeing some of those wind gusts, at least a portion of that wind, get mixed down to the ground, mixed down to the surface. And here's the storm moving through. The warm air is off to the east. It's going to be pushed out pretty quickly, and temperatures are going to drop fast later tonight. You are going to feel that chill once we get this system out of here as it moves on through. So again, look outside here in New London. You'll still see some white caps there on the harbor. Things are looking a little bit better in Waterbury, but the camera's still shaking around. You can see the flag blowing around pretty good in Waterbury. So at least right now, eastern Connecticut has seen the most damage and the strongest winds, but elsewhere, still some issues. 57 in Bristol, 57 in Middletown, 58 in New Haven. So it was a very warm start to the day today with temperatures way, way above normal for the time of year. And wow, just got a wind gust in the Wyndham Airport of 56 knots. So that's 64 miles an hour. That is a good gust. That came in at 11:03 this morning. So didn't quite get, it was about 50 minutes ago. But the Wyndham Airport is sort of in a little hollow. It's sort of down in elevation a little bit. So that's a real impressive wind gust for them at the Wyndham Airport. So not surprised to see the power outages sort of peak in that part of the state. That's where we saw Canterbury, one of the towns hardest hit. So the Wyndham Airport there in Wyndham County with that strong wind gust there of 64 miles per hour. Those are some good gusts. It's not that unusual to see that kind of wind gust at one of the shoreline airports, but to get it at the Wyndham Airport, that's tough to do. So again, got 49,000 Eversource customers without power right now, at about 8,000 UI customers, Bolton, Killingworth, Clinton, Hampton, Canterbury, Killingly, Chester, some of the hardest hit towns. So the numbers continue to be on the high side in terms of power outages. And then here you can see the cold coming in for tonight. Quite a bit of chill that'll be screaming in on the backside of the storm. So still gusty tonight, wind chill a factor, but we're not talking about winds that'll be strong enough to take down this many trees and power lines. So again, the worst of what we're getting is right now, and things will get better as we go through the day, and we will see some improvement. Again, that wind advisory remains in effect. High wind warning out to the east, although, again, as I said before, most of the state getting high wind warning conditions. The Weather Service just didn't have that advisory out. They were a little too low with the forecast. So live Doppler radar still showing some rain coming through, but not like it was before. You can see earlier, this is a 2-hour radar loop. 2 hours ago, it was pouring statewide, but now we're starting to see a little bit of improvement. And as the drier air moves in, things will improve. It's going to take some time, but we will see some improvement out there. Again, peak wind gusts so far that I've seen 70 miles an hour out in Rowayton in Fairfield County and 67 miles per hour in Groton. So those are some good gusts for sure across Connecticut as this storm has moved on through. Just looking quickly here to see if I can see any more observations. I don't have anything new. Let's see here. Got a report of unconfirmed report, large tree across the road in Brooklyn and a tree on a car in Hampton. So eastern Connecticut especially dealing with a number of issues as the storm has moved on through. And again, the worst of it coming through now. Things will begin to improve as we go through the day today. We will see some improvement by this afternoon. Things are looking a little bit better. So I have some viewer questions for you and comments. Want to go through these, and we're going to wrap this up here. Daniel says he's been without power in Madison since 10:20. Jenny says, how's Waterbury doing? Waterbury is better. We're not done with the rain quite yet. A little more coming in, but the strongest winds have been to the east. Michael asked, what can we expect for wind gusts when the wind direction shifts from southerly to westerly? So right now the strongest winds today have been out of the south, but we're going to get a westerly wind to develop later today. And the winds will not be as strong as they are now. The winds were really strong as this thing came through this morning, but the westerly winds will be gusty, but not quite as bad as they were right now. Danielson's been out for about an hour with power. Jamie says, crazy here in Moosup. Power is flickering like crazy. Jenny says she's got a report of a tree on a house in Putnam. Matt, when will the wind slow down near Uncasville? I think the wind will slow down in Uncasville probably within a half an hour, 45 minutes. This will be gusty, but the worst of it will move through pretty quickly. Clara says lots of power outages in Milford. Shane, I'm from the east near Danielson, and it's scary out there. Yeah, pretty nasty for sure. Again, not lasting much longer. The core of the strongest winds heading into Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Chris wants to know any issues with freezing roads later today. It's possible tonight, although I'm not terribly concerned about that. The reason why I'm not terribly concerned is because when you have these strong winds, you tend to dry things out pretty quickly. So the wind can actually help evaporate the rain that you've got and the puddles you have, so it can sort of mitigate the freeze concerns. So that's one thing we have going for us. But yes, there could be some slick spots that develop as temperatures drop tonight. Lacey says it has been a mess in Harwinton, and we've heard about that. We heard some power outages and some trees down in Harwinton. Andy goes, hello from Burlington. The sun is trying to speak through. That is good. Greg says winds were high, but no damage in Hampden. Guess the worst was just east of here. I assume there are some issues in Hampden, but at least right now, glad to hear things are okay in your backyard, Greg. And Matthew says, I remember hearing about a line of heavy rain, possibly a couple thunderstorms at around 1. Is that going to stay in northern New York? Yeah, let me show you that. That is going to stay in northern New York. And it's actually in Vermont right now. So that line of thunderstorms that we had sort of fizzled out. But certainly the damage was done here by the strong wind out ahead of it. And you can see that line moving through New York State up into Vermont right now, crossing the Green Mountains. And that's going to continue to move to the east. Mike says, imagine if this was snow, it'd be quite the blizzard. And Sal goes, is it almost passed through Shelton? Yes, it is. Things are improving down in Shelton right now. Still some rain, still some wind, but the biggest threat for damage, I think, is going to come to an end pretty soon. So just in terms of what we've got, just wrapping this up, again, strong winds moving through. We've seen wind gusts in some towns between 60 and 70 miles per hour today. We've got a number of power outages getting close to 60,000 customers without power for both Eversource and United Illuminating. And some strong winds, but the core of the wind is beginning to move east. In fact, I'm just looking at Boston, just gusted up to 64 miles per hour at Logan Airport. So instead of the strongest winds, first we were seeing those gusts down toward New York City, JFK and LaGuardia were gusting up close to 60, and now we're getting those winds up toward Boston. So we were in between. They were rolling on through, and now we're getting the worst to be up toward Boston. That means things will, at least locally, begin to improve here as we go through the next hour or so. So take it easy, take it safe if you're going to be on the roads, because there are obviously some big puddles out there and there are some trees down and some tree limbs down. So just take it easy, be safe out there. And if you have power, hopefully we'll get things restored soon. So we'll keep you updated as necessary throughout the afternoon with the storm as it moves on through. Thank you so much for watching.